On this episode of Geek Dad Life, we're going to review the new Masters of the Universe Origins Trapjaw figure by Mattel. Hello everybody and welcome to Geek Dad Life. It's your host, Jay Glaffelter here. Wave 2 pre-orders of the Masters of the Universe Origins figures from Walmart.com are arriving now, and while they really haven't hit mass retail yet, we're only a few months away from when it is a full retail line, and hopefully everybody that wants any figure from these first two waves will be able to get one. Now that I have this Trapjaw, I will have reviewed all of the figures from Wave 2 of MOTU Origins. And if you want me to do more of these types of reviews, click that like button. And if you want to see when those videos come out, click the subscribe button and that bell icon to be notified when the latest episode of Geek Dad Life drops. Trapjaw is one of the most iconic and popular figures from the original Masters of the Universe line. It's been in every incarnation of the comics, cartoon series, reboots, classics. Everything has had its own version of Trapjaw. The original figure was inspired by Jaws from Moonraker, as well as Iron Jaw from the Big Jim line, also by Mattel. He's this really cool mishmash of a steampunk, pirate, robot, cyborg, criminal that made his first appearance in the mini-comics in the Wave 2 issue, The Menace of Trapjaw. He was famously green in this issue. There's been variants of that version of Trapjaw. This mini-comics appearance was a really cool one in which he kind of was brought in from another dimension by Skeletor, but he actually was able to harness the power of Grayskull, and both He-Man and Skeletor had to team up to defeat him. Taking a look at the packaging, the front has that amazing red rock burst with the Masters of the Universe logo as well as the starry background. We have Trapjaw evil and armed for combat with the modern posing retro play starburst as well as a new for 20 in the top right hand corner, 6+ in the right. On the back of that box, we have more fantastic artwork from Axel and Francisco. It showcases that Trapjaw can be kind of strung on a string on the top of his helmet, and it's really cool. It's him kind of facing also the mini comic version of Ram Man as well as He-Man. And then we also have the little blurb, the cybernetic criminal can literally arm himself with any weapon he needs for battle. Going further down the box, in his info boxes, it showcases how you can interchange the weapons into his hands, and also it shows that you can open and close the jaw for biting action. We also have cross-cell artwork with the original He-Man and Skeletor, as well as the Wave 2 figures Man-E-Faces Orko, Trapjaw, and Scareglow. Unlike previous reviews, I opened this figure live on my weekly toy talk show, Toy Geeks, because this Trapjaw figure already has a significant variant in the retail release. Posted on the MOTU Origins fan page on Facebook, Ruben Garza pointed out that there is two different types of arms that are coming with these Trapjaws. And at first I thought maybe it was a, production error, but people in that chat were saying some got a version of this arm that did not have a hinge joint that goes right into the shoulder socket, and some did. And I was really worried because I wanted as many articulating points as possible. And luckily for me, when I opened this Trapjaw figure, it had the fully articulating robot arm. And while I initially hoped it wouldn't make that much of a difference, once I had this thing in hand, that articulating point made a huge difference in terms of the displayability and posability of this figure. It has so much more range of motion than the original vintage Trapjaw figure had, allowing for way more displayability and posability than if you had just the cut joint version. My hope is this production change was for the improvement, that hinge joint, and maybe the earlier releases have that swivel cut joint. So hopefully most people will be able to easily get the hinge joint version. It's going to be hard to tell in the box. I would think it would separate a little bit more if you can get, pick between the different Trapjaws and get the one that you would prefer. So while that added articulation to the robotic arm of Trapjaw is fantastic, his range and mobility of his head and neck joint is far less than the other MOTU Origins figures. That's mainly because the hinge jaw feature impedes the ability for the neck and the head to kind of move around on that ball joint. And then the actual connecting point in the neck and in the mold of that torso is just a static piece as opposed to the other MOTU Origins, which again kind of has a hinged ball joint that adds even more range of motion to the head sculpt. It's a little bit of a bummer. I wish maybe they could have engineered this better to add more range of motion, but at the end of the day, I don't think it ruins the figure. It just maybe knocks it just a little bit compared to the other MOTU Origins figures. Other than that, the articulation is what you would expect if you've had any of the other figures. Totaling them up, you do get 16 points of articulation. You have an added one with that jaw, but you do lose one in the wrist joint where you have the robotic arm. Unless you want to count the fact that you can kind of swivel the gun, hook, or claw, since you can kind of, interchange those parts. The figure stands a little over 5.5 inches tall, making him taller than his vintage counterpart, but he is probably the shortest out of all the MOTU Origins figures so far. Much like the vintage and most of the other Origins figures so far, the paint apps are slim, but they are effective just on his helmet as well as his eyes, little extra dots there in his pupils, his forearm, as well as his 2 thighs. The colors really do pop though from the plastic that it was molded in. Really like how it looks and really kind of goes in line with all of the MOTU Origins figures so far. They just really pop and look great on a shelf. The accessories for Trapjaw are an integral part of the character and they've pulled them off well. The hook and laser cannon is larger than the vintage counterpart, but the claw is actually a rare example of an Origins accessory being smaller than its vintage counterpart. The belt is a little bit softer than even what we saw on the vintage one. The skull and crossbones is really very, very soft compared to the vintage belt. Going side by side to a vintage Trapjaw, you can see how the colors really differ on the vintage to the modern Origins take. The Origins one much brighter, much more kind of neon in all of its colors, and then the vintage one more subdued. But you have to remember it is also almost 40 years old, so there is going to be a bit of a color fading compared to when it was first released. But when looking at the vintage and the Origins one side by side, you can really see how much of that original character they've improved here in this 5.5 inch scale. All these added articulating points in the arm especially really give so much more dynamic posability that really makes this Origins line so special, and Trapjaw is a great example of that. This is a perfect figure to wrap up Wave 2 for me. He's an original Wave 2 character, just like Manny Faces. And then along with Orko, as well as Scareglow, it was a really great but smaller wave that really capped off a great year of Masters of the Universe Origins toys from Mattel. Wave 3 is already hitting in Europe, so hopefully I'll be able to get my hands on those soon. But for what I have now, all of these characters that we've gotten so far, as well as vehicles and beasts, it's been a great year for collecting Masters of the Universe figures. And Trapjaw keeps the streak going. This one definitely gets the Geek Dad Life buy rating, especially if you get the hinged version of that robotic arm. Again, I hope this was a change to all of them having that hinge going forward, and it's not just a random thing where they'll keep making swivel cuts as well as hinge cuts, and then we'll have to just keep guessing which versions we might get. Definitely check out my other reviews for the Masters of the Universe Origins line. I have a playlist right here, as well as join us on Sundays at 9 p.m. for Toy Geeks, our live toy talk show where we obviously talk about the MOTU Origins line and so much more, any and every toy line and news and topics related to toy collecting. So be sure to join us 9 p.m. on Sundays right here on this channel. So make sure to hit that like button and the subscribe button and that bell icon to be notified when the latest episode of Geek Dad Life drops. We'll see you all next time. Hasta luego and goodbye.